Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. We've just got the new Ban and Restricted update, and Psychic Frog and Vexing Bauble have both left the format. What better thing for us to do when the format changes up a little bit than to play my beloved Green-Black Turbodepths. So that's exactly what we're doing here as part of our Depthcember as well. Tomorrow on the channel I'll be playing some meta deck that I think is good at the moment that might not have Dark Depths in because the format's changed and people want to see stuff. But today we're still in Depthcember and we're still jamming a lovely bit of Turbodepths. So if you're unfamiliar with this deck, maybe you haven't been watching my channel enough. But anyway, so Dark Depths makes a 2020 indestructible flyer when it has no counters. So we strip all the counters off with Hexmage, or we make a copy, and because Thespian stage entered as a Thespian stage, it doesn't have counters on, and then makes us 2020. We've got a bunch of tutors to make this happen: Sylvan Scrying and Crop Rotation, fast mana to power out, and Lotus Petal and Elvish Spirit Guide, hand disruption between Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek to make sure we can push through our opponent's interaction. Same with these Pithing Needles to stop Wastelands and Karakas, and the Not of This World to protect itself from any removal. We've got 3 Once Upon a Time in here to help smooth out our opening draws, and a few little silver bullets in the lands: Bojuka Bog, Boseiju, Ghost Quarter, Sejiri Steppe. Now, a lot of decks that play Boseiju don't get to tutor it up in a way they can actually use it. We do because we have Sylvan Scrying, which is really neat. Sideboard-wise, free Collector Ouphe. I think the Karn Forge deck, even without Vexing Bauble, is still going to be really strong. We've got another Not of This World. We want more of that effect. And same with the Sylvan Safekeeper, which can kind of double up on that sort of effect. A little bit more hand disruption, just a nice general catch-all. Some Abrupt Decays to blow up problem permanents, whether that's Blood Moon, Opposition Agent, whatever. Another Boseiju. I like having access to the other land here. And we've got some Graveyard Hate and Faerie Macabre. You'll notice that we have the Collector Ouphe and Faerie Macabre in 3-Rs because we are running ourselves the Once Upon a Time, which can find these, which is handy. We also have the Bojuka Bog as main deck Graveyard Hate anyway. So yeah, that's the list. I'm expecting the new meta to still have the same top 3 decks. I think Nadu is probably the best deck now because it didn't get touched at all. I think Karn Forge is still very strong. It just cuts some of its protection pieces in it, Vexing Bauble, in favour of more payoffs. So it's just going to try and resolve more payoffs rather than resolve a thing that lets them resolve their payoffs. Does that make sense? And I think Blue-Black Reanimator is probably just going to cut 4 Frog and add in some like Emperor of Bones and Tamiyo, that sort of thing, and still be really strong. So I'm not expecting huge changes in the meta, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Lightning Bolt is a little bit better now, so we might see a bit more in the way of red decks. But let's venture into this great unknown of this new format with 2 cards less in it. If you're interested in Dark Depths, by all means check out my Patreon. That's where I have a lot of content for Dark Depths decks, mainly Turbodepths on there. So by all means check that out. Like and subscribe and all that sort of jazz. Become a YouTube member for £1 a month, get to see my videos early. And now let's sit back and enjoy some delicious 2020 action. Okay, this is a bit of a weird opener. We're relying a lot on this Once Upon a Time to hit something for us. We do still have a turn 2 here because we can play the Dark Depths, crop rot it using the Elvish Spirit Guide for a Urborg, and then turn 2 make the Hexmage. So this is definitely a keeper. Hopefully the Once Upon a Time can find us a little bit more juice. We'll see what our opponent's playing at some point, but we have to use our Once Upon a Time before we know what our opponent's doing. Okay, we've just drawn the Urborg. That is a-okay with me. Play this out. Got this Pithing Needle. Name a Wasteland, and we're ready to make a turn 2 Hexmage, and we will have protection via the Sejiri Steppe using the crop rotation off of the Elvish Spirit Guide. So pretty strong. We're going to see some reanimate here. Okay, so we can just Bojuka Bog here if we need to. Mox Opal, okay. This is probably going to be a Storm combo of some description, so the Bojuka Bog might come in clutch here, we'll see. A Galvanic Relay. Little redraw here. Beseech the Mirror. Okay. So the plan is still very much in effect here. I will play out this Lotus Petal. I will jam your friend of mine, Vampire Hexmage. And I'll pass a turn. So our opponent has to win this turn. They're probably going to go through a Beseech the Mirror line. We might not be able to stop that though. But if they use the graveyard, then we got it covered. I've got 3 cards in hand to go with this Beseech. It might necessitate a graveyard line, but they might have access to Song of Creation. And if they have enough stuff saved up here. So they can just Beseech right now. Going for a gamble. It's just going to be an Echo line, because we can blow that out in theory. A Lion's Eye Diamond. Get to super blow out the Echo because of the order they've played their stuff out. But if they'd have gambled and got rid of the Echo, we could have played it in response to the Lion's Eye Diamond. I don't think we're going to remove anything of our opponents here. We're just going to get a new grip. Alright, we can still crop rotate. Lion's Eye Diamond. Mox Opal. Another gamble. Under City Sewers. Okay, so we're probably spinning again here. So they still have this Beseech hanging around in exile as well. So they can crack the LED for the black mana to cast it. And they are pretty close to just going off with the Tendrils here. Is there a way that we can gain some extra life? No. Beseech the Mirror. The Tendrils is in the graveyard. Okay, maybe we have a line here. Gaia's Will. Okay, so now we fire off this crop rotation, go and get the Bojuka Bog, and it's lights out. That should be the ball game. And then we have ourselves a 2020 to smash with. Beautiful. Love to see it. Okay, so what is going to be good in a matchup like this? Collector Ouphe and Duress are the first things I'm looking at here. These are some pretty important components. The Pithing Needles don't do anything, so that's quite an easy 4-for-4 swap. Now you might be saying, why are you playing Lotus Petal with your Collector Ouphe? And the answer is, if we're on the draw, playing this Collector Ouphe on our turn 1 might be huge. The other options we have are things like the Abrupt Decays, Boseiju, and Faerie Macabres. These are all things that we can run in this matchup, depending on if we want these Not of This Worlds or not. So if we get rid of these Not of This Worlds, we can have access to a Boseiju, just have a little bit more land available, and a couple of Abrupt Decays. If they're playing stuff out to avoid our discard, we can then pick it up. I think that looks pretty reasonable to me. Sejiri Steppe is something I don't mind having as a one-of. I don't think we need the Ghost Quarter, actually. We can probably turn that Ghost Quarter into the Boseiju, actually. Our opponent says they messed up their line there. So I quite like this opener. We have the Duress. We have something that can dig us for a little bit, and we've already got a route to our combo. Our opponent's not going to be countering our spells here. So we do have a line to the combo on 3. Possibly earlier if we can find a Elvish Spirit Guide with the Once Upon a Time. So we've got 7 really good hits with this Once Upon a Time. Actually, we've also got the Hexmages, so we've got even more hits, actually. A Burning Wish. What would you like to find, opponent? A Galvanic Relay. Let's take a peek at the top of our library here. Nothing particularly exciting. I think I'll just take the Bayou. It's not really what I wanted here. So I believe we take the Urborg here. So we have 2 choices. We can play the Thespian stage in the hopes that we get to hit our opponent with some fast one. The problem is we don't get to Duress our opponent. I think we have to Duress our opponent here. So I'm going to play out this Urborg and Duress my opponent. Turners of Agony, Galvanic Relay. I think it's probably just the relay here to take out the... Yes, we take out the card draw aspect of their hand, because what they have right now does not kill us. We can Boseiju away this Chromox if we feel the need. We know what our opponent drew this turn because we have perfect information over here, and it was the Undercity Sewers, and they milled their Boseiju. What do we find here? An Urborg. So we can't go this turn. So I think we play out the Bayou with the intention of holding up this Boseiju. So that's the thing. So if we play out the Thespian stage, we have 1 mana here. We turn this into Dark Depths. That doesn't work. Yeah, we do have to wait and win another turn. So I don't want to fire off the Boseiju straight away because our opponent will have mana that they can find. Because Boseiju is a basic land type, not a basic land. This will give them a Surveil, but it will take them off of mana and Metalcraft. So I'm going to do this in the end step. Okay, it didn't end up taking them off of mana, but it did take them off of Metalcraft, which I think is worth doing here. Okay, so we've got our Thespian stage here. We can Bojuka Bog if we need to in an emergency, if our opponent requires their graveyard. Otherwise, we can just make a 20/20 in our opponent's end step. I don't know if our opponent's brought in things like Chain of Vapor. It's certainly possible. Would I like to keep this Bayou? I don't really care. We've got another source in hand. Let's just crop rotate and get the Dark Depths. And all right, we got the match. Our opponent said they messed up in the first game. Storm is a very difficult deck. I struggle to play it, and I play a lot of Legacy. So it's definitely a deck that has a lot of lines in it where you can make little mistakes. So no shade on our opponent there. I'm sure I would have done much worse myself. All right, let's go to round 2. This is a turn 2 with protection. I will keep this. So turn 1, Urborg, Pithing Needle, unless we need to hold up something like a rotation. So depending on what our opponent shows us. But generally in the blind, we want the Pithing Needle on Wasteland, and if they counter the Pithing Needle, then Wasteland our Urborg, we have another Urborg and just get to reset the game, and it's fine. But we'll see if we need Graveyard based on what our opponent does. Our opponent has kind of told us what they're on here, but I imagine they would probably tell us in the first thing. They're just saying hello. And yeah, so that we were going to know what they're on anyway. So they weren't really giving anything up. I think our hand is good enough to beat Eldrazi here. Well, 1 piece of fast mana away off going off now, but okay. Let's get Pithing Needle in. Our Wasteland down. In case of Chalice on 0 or the need for a crop rotation, we can do that. So the one thing we don't want to see happen here is Thought Not Seer, which obviously, by me saying it, is immediately going to be what our opponent plays. Right, crack in for 2 here. But we can beat the Kozilek's command with a Not of This World as well. There's a Wasteland that doesn't do anything. Do they have a Spirit Guide to get up to 4 mana here? They don't. Okay. I like our chances here. Now they can have like a broken Fleshraker turn. Okay. So we don't need to crack this for green. We can crack this if we're going to be doing this anyway. So we can have a Thoughtseize and check that our opponent's not going to kill us this turn. The One Ring, so Microspawn, so Microspawn. Oh, that's not a nice selection of things to see on the other side, is it? I guess we'll take this One Ring and we will crop rotate away this Verdant Catacombs. We'll go and get this Dark Depths. We'll play the Hexmage. And if our opponent has the One Ring here, then they get to buy another turn. And maybe they have something they can find off of their So Microspawn that does the work here. But if they swing and miss on the land here, then we're all good. All right, they missed on the land. I'll take it. Okay, so the Eldrazi matchup. Has it changed? Not really. So that's kind of good news. We definitely need these Pithing Needles here. So we don't need the Bojuka Bog. We don't need the Sejiri Steppe. We don't need the Inquisitions. And that gets us Boseiju, Not of This World, and 2 Sylvan Safekeepers. Because what we're really concerned about is our opponent's ability to interact with that creature via Karakas Shooter Up or the Kozilek's Command in their hand. So this is the layout I really like. And by having the extra Boseiju, it means we're taking 2 lands out. We're actually putting one in, and these aren't necessarily lands we use for mana, but sometimes they're lands we use for crop rotation purposes. So I think that's a pretty good switch up there. So the reason we have Thoughtseize over the Inquisitions is Thoughtseize can hit Thought-Knot as well, which is an important thing to fight on. So this hand makes a turn 3 2020 if we find... No, this just makes a turn 3 2020, right? Or it makes a turn 2 2020 if we find another piece of the 7 fast manas in our deck. Is that good enough? I think it is just about. We can mess with their mana for a turn using our Boseiju if we need to, and that's not the end of the world. Being on the draw with a hand that doesn't go off until turn 3 is a little awkward. It the Herald's End is not a Chalice. Obviously we have the Chalice covered with the Boseiju, but still. So what do I want here? I think it's probably... We play out the Lotus Petal, that's a given. Do I play out this Verdant Catacombs? And it doesn't forgo the possibility because this gets turned into a Dark Depths anyway, so this is probably the best line. We have the Boseiju we can leverage if certain things happen. Snow-covered waste, and they're holding up what I have to imagine is a Kozilek's Command here, which is certainly a thing we can beat. Okay, so if our opponent tries to wasteland our stage, we can turn it into a Wastes. But we do need one more turn, but our opponent hasn't got the most pressure. Is this just a little K command? It's just a little cheeky one, just a little cantrip, a little scry one. Gives them more mana, so they're more likely to be able to do something really gross next turn, whether that's the One Ring or say Microspawn. I do not feel favoured right now. I'd rather be in my opponent's shoes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they could cast on like a Null Drifter this turn. Okay, so not casting a Null Drifter because this doesn't tap for 2. The One Ring. It's good, but they're not putting that much pressure on us, and we can make a 2020 in response, and we have plenty of Not of This Worlds to keep ourselves going. So in our opponent's upkeep, we probably want to make the Marrelage. Sylvan Scrying, that's not useful just yet. Place one out. I think we might as well make this now. So we go and get the Bayou, I think is the correct one. So we float some mana off of this. We crop rotate this Swamp away. Go and get the Dark Depths. Stage becomes a copy of Dark Depths. Make a 2020. And then we have 3 Not of This World to protect it, which is a lot. Now our opponent can play additional copies of the One Ring and buy extra turns, and maybe they have something like a Karakas and they can get through our Marrelage eventually. But we can protect it and then play the Boseiju next turn because this only costs 1 to pitch because of the Marrelage being a legend. So I think we are okay unless they chain One Rings plus other stuff. That's how we lose this one. You can draw some extra cards. They know their life total doesn't matter when they're getting hit in chunks of 20. An Eye of Ugin, that can certainly allow for some busted stuff here. Just another copy of the One Ring. So they can chain One Rings until they can get like Eye of Ugin going. That's pretty solid. We'll just counter that with our Not of This World. Is the Kozilek's Command. Think we're good? We got 2 more Not of This Worlds. The fact that they didn't do this just for X is 0 makes me think they don't have another one because they could have just done it for them. Alright, so we got the GGs. We're 2-0, we're cruising. Best deck in the new format maybe? Probably not, but I do love it. Let's go to round 3. Okay, what does our hand here do? It doesn't cast the most amount of spells. This is a turn 3 though. I think we can keep this. Turn 3, but on our turn 2 we get to double Thoughtseize our opponent. Sure, I'm willing to have a crack with that. Let's go Scrying. Little Urborg. And carry on. This way, if they waste our stage, we still have ourselves set up to draw the Hexmage as well. Obviously, this combination of 3 lands lets us go on turn 3. But I'm hoping the double Thoughtseize next turn with the protection of the Not of This World is going to be more than enough. Or precisely enough is fine. A Prismatic Vista. So this is going to be a deck that has a bunch of white removal in. Team Mentor over there. I doubt they have Monastery Mentor, but you never know. Okay, let's play this Urborg out. Let's fire in a Thoughtseize. Our opponent can Brainstorm to try and protect their hand. They know what we're doing, so if they have a Brainstorm, they're going to put the Plow and stuff on top. But the hope here is that the Not of This World has that covered, and we're just going to strip their hand of counter magic and other interaction. Spell Pierce. Okay. Let's have another look. Fourth Eolingus, Swords to Plowshares. The Karakas we can beat with our one-of thing here. Alright, I'm going to take the Plow. We'll pass it over. So next turn we have a 20/20. The Karakas will not be good enough. Now a counter spell on top of that Karakas. That'll be a bit of a doozy for us. But this game is going to get worse for us as it goes on. So we need to try and make the most of it while we can. Flood Strand, that was a land that we knew about. Dark Depths, we'll play out this. Lotus Petal, I do not believe our opponent has Daze in their deck. So I suspect our opponent probably just plays the Karakas this turn. And is hoping to spin their wheels with a Ponder or something in the meantime. There is that Karakas. 2 mystery cards in our opponent's hand. Like I said, this game doesn't get better for us the longer it goes, because our opponent just sculpts into so much permission, because they got counter spells, they got white removal spells, they got Karakas. Let's make it 20/20. We're going to see the Karakas tap now. It shouldn't let us go to our turn, really. Let's counter that with a Not of This World. Is that good enough? Or do you find a Plow? A Brainstorm. Alright, they're looking for a Force of Will or a Swords to Plowshares. Either one plays here. Our opponent isn't odds on to hit it, but it wouldn't be a miracle if they did. Now, if they hit a Terminus here, that'd be pretty good. That would be an actual miracle. Okay, so we've got the Plow coming in. Alright, things are difficult for us. We are going to play a Hexmage and try and beat down with it. This also means that Teferi never gets to stick around, because we need so many things to interact with this Karakas. So we need to find our Pithing Needles or Ghost Quarters back to basics, alright? So you get 1 activation off that Karakas. Let's attack. I think I am going to crack my Petal here and just punch a little hole and see if we can buy ourselves enough time. Fourth Eolingus is pretty good here. Teferi is annoying, but we have the Teferi covered. Brainstorm is also pretty good. All of these cards are worth taking. I think the fourth Eolingus is what scares me the most, because Teferi just kind of sets us back to nowhere. Because the only thing they can bounce... Well, they can bounce their own back to basics. But if they bounce our Hexmage, then we remove their Teferi, they don't get a card draw, and then Teferi just dies. And that's a reasonable exchange for us, although I'd rather just keep this creature in play being down. But this is another example of why the game doesn't go better the longer it goes for us. Okay, I think we can probably call it a day there. It's going to take a lot for us to come back, and I don't really want to waste our time or our opponents. So we want these Sylvan Safekeepers. We want this Duress. I would like this Not of This World. This is a nice selection of things to have access to. We do not require Bojuka Bog for this matchup, and the Pithing Needles do not seem great. Like, we can name Teferi, we can name Karakas. Those are okay, but just having protection is going to be better. Would I like a Boseiju over this Pithing Needle? Pithing Needle can name Karakas. I think I probably want the Pithing Needle in over the Boseiju, but it's pretty close, to be honest. I think we're going to submit like this and see how we fare. So this is definitely a matchup where we need to go quick and underneath our opponent. What does this hand do? Probably loses the game. Let's mulligan this one. We have no access to our Dark Depths here. Okay, our opponent's keeping 7. Not the best for us. Okay, this plays. So we have Stage. We have Dark Depths. We have 2 pieces of fast mana if we want them. So we can go on turn 2. We have to put 2 of these cards back. I think we're always putting back the Thespian Stage, and then it's a case of what do we want out of these things? Like, I would love to be able to do something with this Thoughtseize. Okay, I think I'm going to keep the Thoughtseize, as awkward as that is. I'm going to play out this Lotus Petal now. It does expose us to a prismatic ending, but it lets us get the Petal down before any sort of Spell Pierce action that our opponent might have. And they showed us the Spell Pierce. They didn't show us the prismatic ending, but we can probably assume it's there. So what I'm hoping to do next turn is surprise our opponent with a 20/20 using this Spirit Guide mana. We're going to put ourselves in a situation where we can surprise our opponent. And if not, next time we play the Urborg and we get to Thoughtseize them and try again. So our opponent might play scared here and not do anything with their mana. They at least have something to sink their mana into whilst holding it open in terms of the Tamiyo. But if they go for some line here that leaves them exposed, we can take advantage of that. Alright, that did not happen. I'll play an Urborg. I will Thoughtseize my opponent. We get to go again here as well because of the fast mana. So we get double Thoughtseize in this turn cycle. Wasn't good enough last time though. Back to basics. I don't like the back to basics very much. I really don't like the Karakas either. I guess we take the back to basics. And then we Thoughtseize them again. What annoys you more? Is it Teferi or is it Jace? It's probably the Teferi. Is that true? Like, if they're tapping out for the Teferi, I don't really mind that much. If we take the Force of Negation, that means that we can go and Sylvan Scrying or something if we find a green source. I guess we have our Petal as well. Right, so we take the Force of Negation this time around. So our opponent might be tempted to tap out for a Teferi or something this turn. And that's how we can get our opponent. Just surprise them with the burst mana from our Spirit Guide. Yep, drawing card at end step. That was always a given. Using our Urborg to tap their Flooded Strands, they can save it for when they want to shuffle. Pretty tasty there. I believe over the 3 Eternal Weekends together, the Jeskai control decks had a win rate of 42%. So I'm hoping they're going to be a little bit better. Obviously not for our sakes, but just in general. In comes Tamiyo. There's a clue. I probably could use this opportunity, or what looks like an opportunity, to play a land, play a Teferi, a bounce, or they could just play really cautiously and just hold up the Karakas. But if they don't play the Karakas, I think we're going for it here. They played the island. They played the island. Okay, we didn't even know they had an island. Okay, so they're going to play a Teferi here and lose the game. Sure, you can have a Teferi. They're going to try and bounce our Lotus Petal. Or they're just going to plus it. They're plussing with no targets. End turn. Boom. Do the thing. Solitude kills me here. But I don't believe our opponent's running a Solitude. Bash. Okay, that was pretty effective. So now our opponent's going to play super duper scared around our fast mana right there. That's a pretty nice one. Maybe I do want a second Pithing Needle. If we're on the draw, it's going to be a little bit slower, so they're going to be more able to set up. So I'm going to strip out one once upon a time for a second Pithing Needle. We just don't want our opponent to get their hooks in, really. Okay, this is a weird hand. So we have turn 1, Sylvan Scrying. Our opponent probably counterspells that. Alright. Play Lotus Petal, so we just have a little bit of extra mana if we need it. Play a Pithing Needle. We're going to name Karakas here. Are you going to crack your Flooded Strand? They are. Part of me would have been tempted in Karakas. Not for you, opponent. The Sejiri Steppe being in our hand is really awkward. But that is the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. See if we can get this Hexmage in. Right, we've got a Force of Will out of it. Sure. Pitch to Narset. Sure. That's one of their reloads. It's going to be a Teferi. Another Narset. Sure. I'm not sure if our opponent's running Days Undoing. It's certainly possible. Let's see what they show us. Surgical Extraction. I think it's going to take our Hexmage. So what are we doing here? I think we could play out the Sejiri Steppe and sacrifice it right now to the crop rotation. We know that our opponent plays Force of Negation, so we don't really want to do this in our turn. I don't necessarily want to do it in our opponent's upkeep either. I think this is where we make our stand with it. We can pay through a Spell Pierce if we need to. Okay, we're just in. I'll get the stage out. Our opponent needs to have removal and counterspell here. Or 2 removal spells. But they're fine with the Narset, and if that changes our perspective on matters. We can draw some more cards over the next few turns and see if we can sculpt a better way. The problem is our opponent's deck is way better at sculpting hands than we are. We're very good at finding a very specific thing and doing it, but we can't necessarily sculpt to get the protection to go around it all the time. There's a long pause on this Narset, which might mean our opponent's dead. A pause of this length means I'm going to send it here. A Brainstorm. Oh, that is not a power play. They know they have to beat the Not of This World as well as the 2020. 4 cards in hand. I think we are going to send it. Like I said, it's not going to get better for us. Our opponent's going to be brainstorming and pondering. Let's just see if we can make the big boy. Riddles McDiddles. We have 1 piece of protection. Our opponent has potentially 2 white sources. And we don't know what level of counter magic our opponent has. Okay, I think they have a Force of Negation, which we did play around earlier, but now it's possibly going to come back to bite us. There is the Force of Negation. As predicted. Okay. A Dark Depths, you say. Scrying. Just going to get ourselves another Thespian stage. So if we draw Hexmage, we can go next turn. Otherwise, we go in 2 turns' time. Another Surgical Extraction here would be pretty damning, and that is a reason to maybe play the Dark Depths out. But then we're just going even slower and letting our opponent sculpt even more. Okay, they have Harbinger of the Seas and Back to Basics. Was not expecting that. What is our solution to the Harbinger of the Seas here? Let's have a little look. How many Abrupt Decays we brought in? 0. Okay. I was not expecting the Harbinger here, and now we're probably dead. I think we can scoot this one up. Unfortunate. But this is a tough matchup, and our opponent had to have a very precise spread of things to beat us here. So I don't feel too bad about losing that one. This one does make a 20/20 on turn 2. I will keep this. We also have 2 different lines of protection. This is pretty solid. This is the sort of hand you want when you sign up for this deck. Because we use a Spirit Guide to Sylvan Scrying on 1 to get the Dark Depths for turn 2. Would quite like to have access to the Pithing Needle on 1 though. Do I want a Swamp or do I want a Hexmage? Hexmage is a bit of a tell as to what we're doing. I think we actually want the Swamp here. And I think I am going to play out the Pithing Needle, because Wasteland is going to be pretty good against us. This makes us slightly slower, but I think it plays around a lot of stuff. I quite like being on the draw with Depths, to be honest. Weirdly, because then you kind of know if your turn 1 Pithing Needle is doing another Pithing Needle. But we're not actually playing the Dark Depths this turn, so we can afford to play this out so that we can play around a Daze here. So we go and get ourselves the Dark Depths here. We can play another Pithing Needle and name Tamiyo. Is Tamiyo what I'm really worried about? The -1 is annoying, but I guess we can play that next turn and it doesn't matter anyway. And we might see something else from our opponent we want a Pithing Needle, like a Caracas or whatever. What is our opponent playing? A Brainstorm. Okay, so they are flipping the Tamiyo, so we will be casting Pithing Needle next turn. Which one we cast around Daze is interesting to see. Like if they crack a fetch, we don't care about the Tamiyo plus. But if they're a blue-black deck, they might not want to do it anyway. But because they've played a Brainstorm, they probably want to crack a fetch here. There it is. A Verdant Catacombs. We could be looking at Bug Beans. Would be my initial guess. But we'll see what they go and find. A Tropical Island. And a Ponder. Sure. So they will not have mana that necessarily interacts with our creature. If they're on Bug, they're not going to have like the Swords to Plowshares of the world. So I can play this Hexmage. I think that's the correct line here. And play the Pithing Needle into the Daze. Seasoned Scholar. Alright, so we've got 20/20 waiting. Doesn't get to buy back a Ponder or Brainstorm to dig this turn. I doubt they have many ways of interacting with the 20/20. They probably have 1 or 2 Brazen Borrowers. But we have 2 Not of This World. So I'm pretty confident that we can deal with this. They did not shuffle here. We're still going to go for it. That's exactly what these 2 Not of This Worlds are for. We could get Stifled here. That would be really annoying. Why would I say that? Alright, we're in. We're not getting Stifled. You're going to borrow us? Shoulder's Edict. Yeah, that's a doozy, isn't it? Okay, they have more answers than I initially thought. So they probably have a spread of like 1 Brazen Borrower, 1 Shoulder's Edict. That sort of thing. And like some number of fail push. Probably less now. Yeah, so we are very much in Bug Beans. Identify this off of the second land they played. It's really important to try and identify what your opponent's playing early on so you can sculpt your game towards it and work out when you're trying to go. We are going to be removing some counters from this Dark Depths. A Murktide Regent. Okay, we're not going to bother with removing counters now because this will kill us before we get to remove them all. But we have a lot of draws that are good here. Less draws than normal because we don't have any green mana. A Ghost Quarter. Okay, this can find us green mana if we find something like a Crop Rotation next turn. So we can float off the black, turn it into a forest, crop rotate, and just try and go ham that way. Very unfortunately, had what might possibly be a one-of answer to our creature in their deck. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes you storm off when your opponent stifles you. It's the price we pay for greatness. A Lorien Revealed, sure. Opponent has many cards. They have to go to clean up. An Uro, not a bad one to clean up. That's not good. That is not good. I don't think the Not of This World are actually going to protect our creatures very much. So we have 1 turn to draw a Sylvan Scrying. Does work. So yes, we need a Sylvan Scrying, Crop Rotation, Thespian Stage, Vampire Hexmage. So that's a lot of draws still. So that's what, 14? 14 out of 46? That's not bad odds. Thoughtseize, yeah, read them and weep, opponent. Weep at how irrelevant they are against your deck, most likely. Another Murktide. So this is very good for our opponent because this grows their first Murktide. But it also means that that even if we make a 20/20 next turn, they can go wide and kill us. So I don't believe we have any outs at this point. I'll take one more draw step because I like looking at the cards in my deck because they're all beautiful. But I think we are dead here. Nope. Okay. Not the best for us. So what would I like to get rid of here? I don't think the Not of This World are going to be that impactful. I think we would like a Duress, and we want some number of these Abrupt Decays. I don't believe we need the Bojuka Bog, so that can become another Abrupt Decay. So the reason I'm boarding in Abrupt Decays is because our opponent is quite likely to have the Harbinger of the Seas. Do I want an additional Abrupt Decay to help against that? Is that a fight I want to take? Unsure. I do like the Boseiju here. We know they have Wastelands. If we're boarding in a load of spells like this, it makes Once Upon a Time worse. So maybe we'll do something along these lines. Because Once Upon a Time gets a lot worse. Well, not a lot worse, but it gets a bit worse when you're, like, some of the things you're trying to find in your deck, it misses. So we're trying to find Hand Disruption and Abrupt Decays. So we can use our opponent's Harbinger of the Seas as a piece of our combo. So this hand gets us where we need to go in a roundabout way, but it's not actually that exciting. I think we can do better. Okay, I think we can keep this one. We'll get rid of one of the Abrupt Decays. So the plan is to cast a Sylvan Scrying on 2, but we can obviously change up our plan if we feel the need to. Let's see how much our opponent wants to fetch basics, because that will give us a little bit of a tell if our opponent's playing Harbinger or not. Okay, Tamiyo. We don't have any Surveil lands to fetch, we're not going to do anything at end step here. A Vampire Hexmage again. Let's go and get ourselves a Bayou. Is that right? Yes, I think it is right. It does leave us a little bit exposed, but I imagine our opponent's saving their Wastelands for our actual juicy lands here. But they might just snap them off in fear of an upcoming Pithing Needle. It's going to be a Force of Will, pitching Murktide Reach. Sure. I'd much rather they Force of Will our Sylvan Scrying than our Crop Rotation. In comes a Tamiyo. So they're going to flip their Tamiyo, but they're already on 18. So obviously the ability of Tamiyo to just win the game with its ultimate is a little bit scary for us. But the rest of its modes aren't that bad. Like rebuying stuff is also fine too. This Thoughtseize is pretty good. We're going to lose our Crop Rotation here. Oh, we took the Decay. That is very interesting. That suggests to me that they are on a Harbinger of the Seas line. And Urborg. Let's get Hexmage in. So we could Crop Rotate right now, which dodges Wasteland. But we don't need to do that, I don't think. Because we've got a second Hexmage. A Plunder, sure. So we can tap the Tamiyo down for 1 if we feel the need. Sure, they are activating their Tamiyo. They did not shuffle off the Ponder. I'm going to cast a Crop Rotation. I think I'm getting rid of... I think it's the Bayou. As annoying as that is. Could be the Thespian stage here, but we're going to go for this. Alright, Force of Will. Sure. Alright, let's attack our opponent directly. Play a Pithing Needle. Tamiyo, Seasoned Scholar again. Stop them rebuying any of their interaction. Now, yes, we do have a Vampire Hexmage who can pick that up, but I quite like just pressuring our opponent a little bit here. Alright, so we're cycling Alone Revealed. I imagine this could be for a tropical island. There it is. So now they're going to have access to a Beanstalk or something to attack our opponent. And Orcish Bowmasters. Are they going to make the mistake of pinging our Hexmage? They are. It's not like a huge mistake, but it just means that they don't get a token. But it does get rid of the Hexmage. So it's a case of what they're valuing is clearly just removing our Hexmage from the board. But now we have a 2/1 first striker against their 1/1. Their puny 1/1 creature. Right, they're cracking a clue. Let's go attacks. Just those good old-fashioned Hexmage beats. That's what you all came here to see, wasn't it? The Hexmage beatdown show. Here is a Hexmage again. A Daze. I'm going to pay for this. That does use our only green source, but we have a 3-turn clock in play. I will take that. Send in the clowns. Play this. We can name Wasteland. No more Wasteland shenanigans for you. They probably have one Boseiju in their deck. It wouldn't surprise me if they did. I don't know if they're on a lone build or not. Are they asking themselves, how do we get to the situation? Now, if they draw something like a Murktide, we obviously can't fight into that. If we draw a mana source of any colour, we can use the Thespian stage to become a tropical island and unlock green mana as well. Witherbloom Command. So remove all those characters in Orcish Bowmaster. Can get back another land here. Polluted Delta. This cuts our clock by a reasonable amount. I did say if we had a land of any colour, but that's not quite true, is it? I think we are correct to play this Urborg though. Was our opponent got a reaction to this? A hedge maze. I don't think they're going to react really. They left a card on top. Is there a terrifying Murktide region in our future? Possibly. So I can at least shrink the Murktide region if I have to. So if we find a Dark Depths, it will be big anyway. A Barrow Goyf. The life gain is pretty useful, as is the card draw, but it's going to take a while for it to become as useful as it needs to be. It's a case of, does our opponent have a Shoulder's Edict in hand? That old chestnut. Do I want to let our opponent swing and connect? I don't want to, but I think it's correct to let them connect it. Because 9 is significantly less than 20. Okay, they've milled over a Shoulder's Edict. That fills me with a little bit of comfort. A Tamiyo, sure. So they can't Snapcaster for the Edict here. Do they have multiple Edicts? Or is this Tamiyo to block? Okay, I had the impression that Tamiyo was there to block, but was not the case. This is where we immediately draw a hand disruption spell. Okay, this one doesn't hit Brazen Borrower anyway. So that's us for 4. Right, I think we fire this off. Because if we draw a Dark Depths, it's going to be enough to let us go off. Force of Will, Murderous Cut. Sure, we'll take the Force of Will. And we're taking a little bit of a hit from the Tamiyo here. Pernicious Deed. They probably just get another Barragoyf and stick that in play. They did exactly that. I think with some decks, they can probably just replace Psychic Frog with Barragoyf, to be honest. It does a very similar job a lot of the time, but also can stabilize. And it always trades in combat because of Death Touch. Right, our opponent has a lethal amount of damage, but if we can make a 20-20, we can block. We did not make a 20-20, and that is the end of that game. That was unfortunate. I think in terms of my recorded data against Bug Beans, it's quite positive for us as a general. It's about 55%. But, you know, that's not overwhelming. It's just they have basically 2 cards in their deck that interact with our Merit Age, and sometimes they have them, and sometimes they don't. And we can usually go in underneath what they're doing. Oh well, let's go to the final round. We're currently 2-2 after our good start. Is Turbodepths the best deck in the format? Let's go to the final round and then make a decision, shall we? Alright. This is a hand I am not in love with. Because the Once Upon a Time might not find anything. I think we're going to mulligan this one. Okay, that's why we do these things. I will keep this hand. I'll put the Sejiri Steppe away. And see what our opponent is up to. There's a turn 2 20-20 with this hand. Once Upon a Time. Okay, is our opponent going to be on the Eldrazi side of things? Or are they going to be on the Cradle Control? Possibly a Nardu Elves build? A Wasteland. An Ancient Tomb. Chalice for 1. Okay, so this strikes me as the sort of start you see from an Eldrazi deck. Do you know what's really good against Eldrazi? Is a turn 1 20-20. Now, the one thing we are worried about is our opponent's access to Kozilek's command. So they could just get us here. But they have to have it. And they've already shown us they've got a Wasteland that we aren't necessarily going to have the easiest time playing around. Right? Statistically speaking, your opponent can't always have it, right? But they did have it this time, for sure. That is obviously pretty unfortunate for us. We've used half of our hand and now have nothing to show for it. Alright, let's play out this Verdant Catacombs. We probably need to get a Bayou so that we can cast a Hexmage, but then that is really awkward with the Wasteland there. But our opponent might tap out of the Wasteland to do something. That's pretty devastating. Some people were surprised that Kozilek's command didn't get banned. And I think that would be a pretty reasonable thing to go here. Without Kozilek's command, the Eldrazi matchup is basically a bye, I reckon. Okay. A Hexmage, you say? Alright, we're on to go again. But our opponent needs to tap out of this Wasteland, which they aren't necessarily incentivized to do. The plan is hopefully they play a spell this turn, we untap. Oh, sorry, we Once Upon a Time in the end step, it finds the Dark Depths. We untap, we Hexmage Depths, we win the game. It'd be nice. I think we have to get a Bayou here. As awkward as that can be. We could just get the Forest and try and play slower, maybe. I guess we'll try that. Thespian stage, Urborg. Okay, the Thespian stage is fine here. So it can become a swamp if we want it to. Now we have to time that right around our opponent's Wasteland, but our opponent doesn't need to do anything when they've got the Wasteland held up and pressure in play. However, we can't play this because of the Chalice of the Void. Right, if our opponent wastes their Wasteland by trying to target our stage at some point, we can just copy the swamp. If they ever tap out of it, we can copy the swamp. That doesn't necessarily mean the most. Oh wow, they've walked right into our trap here. You've activated my trap card. It becomes an illegal target. Boom. They have another Wasteland. If they'd have played that first, then they could have guaranteed killing our thing. I don't think they care that much, given the state of the board, but now we get to play out a Hexmage, and we can remove the counters from the Chalice, and then play a Pithing Needle if we want to, and name the Wasteland. So we're making a game of this one, even though things went a little bit awry for us early doors. I don't think that colourless decks should necessarily have a 2-mana answer to a 2020 creature. I don't think that's a particularly reasonable thing to exist. Doesn't feel very colour pie-ish, does it? A crop rotation. Okay, this is interesting. Black, black. Let's remove the counters on this Chalice of the Void. Cast a Pithing Needle, name Wasteland. And then next turn we can 2020 our opponent. We're certainly making a game of this one. We have a Maya. It doesn't really help us. Doesn't hinder us either, but it's nice to have this Yawgmoth around for later, but I don't know if they're about to cast a Sowing Mica Spawn. Wastecape Battle Mage. Yep, it's a pretty good one. So they hit us a 4. That puts us down to 7, and they're representing 2 damage on top of that next turn. So we're not quite dead yet, but it doesn't feel like we're the most alive I've ever been in my life. So this gets countered by their Chalice. So we can't quite make a 2020 just yet. We left ourselves open to draw the land and make the 2020 if they didn't have the Wastecape Battle Mage. It doesn't seem ideal for us. We'll see what they get first. Another Wasteland, you say? I could turn this into something, but what does that actually do for us? I just don't think we can win this one now. Let's just go to game 2. So let's get out the Bojuka Bog, the Sejiri Steppe, the Inquisitions can go, and then we want like Safekeeper, Not This World, and Boseiju. No, that works for me. Okay, so we have Safekeeper into Sylvan Scrying. This is a turn 3 with protection. I think that's pretty reasonable. We got the Ghost Claw that can try and nail a piece of their interaction if necessary. But if our opponent just has one of those silly hands, they go turn 2 Sowing Mica Spawn. You know, that beats like 99% of decks, pretty much. That's, and maybe not 99, probably about 90. Like, there's a lot of combo decks that can still win from that position. It had to be like a Storm-style combo deck, really. Thought Not Seer, Gaia's Cradle. Ancient Tomb. A Wasteland. Okay, opponent. I see you. I see what you're about. And Urborg is very interesting, isn't it? Prepare a stage, and then I'm going to Sylvan Scrying here. I'll get this Dark Depths. I'll attack my 1 point of damage. So the plan is to use the Hexmage next turn, and then crop rotate into another copy of Depths, because our opponent thinks it's coming the turn after. Alternatively, if they just send it right now, we can send it with 2 protection bubbles from the Safekeeper going. They're just targeting our stage right now. Okay, let's protect our guy. This seems not ideal for our opponent, unless they have 2 Kozilek's commands in hand. In which case, then, I guess you get me. So we do this in our opponent's upkeep to make things more difficult for them. Alright, they're just scooping it up. Lovely. Should we see if we can do that again? I would like to very much. What does this hand do? It does nothing, but also does it very slowly, so let's mulligan. What does this hand do? We have the protection for Wasteland. Have a lot of tutors. Probably can bin off this Boseiju. Temple, and no follow-up. Sure. A piece of fast mana. Does that change anything here? I think if we play out the Thespian stage, it means another piece of fast mana allows us to go next turn, but we have to sack this anyway. I think we just play out the Bayou here. Play this on the Wasteland. I will deploy this Lotus Petal in case we need to crop rotate. We have 2 ways to get our Dark Depths here. So I thought not, so we probably just let it connect. So we can let this connect and leave our opponent making a decision. They probably have to take the crop rotation. Took the Vampire Hexmage. Reasonable. Elvish Spirit Guide. So we play this out. Then we have this turns into a Dark Depths, and then we have 2 mana and we just make a 2020. There's no Wasteland our opponent can have. We just pass it over with our opponent, assuming we can't go off with what they've seen. And hope they don't play a Wasteland here. Oh no, sorry, not a Wasteland. I leave mana up for a Kozilek's command. We've already got the Wasteland covered. I have to imagine our opponent's going to go for making more pressure this turn, because we're still on 20, and they know our hand is pretty stacked given enough time. They're probably concerned as to why we didn't Sylvan Scrying. Could just make a 20-20 here and eat the Thoughtseize if they have the Kozilek's Command. We don't want to play into it. Another Eldrazi Temple, so they can just leave up one land. Talisman of Curiosity. Okay. You're going to follow this up with another card? They are. Okay, this is great news for us. Glaring Fleshraker. It's not often you say it's great news that your opponent has played a Glaring Fleshraker, but here we are. Let's quite rotate this away. Going to get Dark Depths. Target this. Boom. Alright, and we got a nice win against there. 2-0 against Eldrazi in this league. I think the Eldrazi matchup is better than some people think. They can certainly have draws that are horrible. Like the top echelons of the Eldrazi draw are going to pummel us. But I think we have a reasonable game into them. Alright, let's talk about the deck. So, is this the best deck to play now that the format has had a couple of bans? I don't know about that, but it still feels fine to play. Well, the matchup we lost against the Jeskai was actually pretty close, and that deck is not particularly good. Well, it wasn't particularly good in the meta. I don't think the meta's changed enough to make that deck good. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's going to be a little bit better now. It doesn't have to contend with Vexing Baubles. It was one of the decks that actually had a good matchup into the Mystic Forge deck. It was basically the only deck that had a good matchup into Mystic Forge. And I don't think hitting the thing that it was good against is necessarily going to make it any better. Obviously, not having to worry about Psychic Frog is a thing, but Psychic Frog wasn't like ruining it that much anyway. It was just all the other stuff going on, and it's horrible into Nadu and stuff like that. So being bad against the Jeskai deck doesn't make me feel too bad about this. The Bug Beans, that is against what my data on the matchup says. But, you know, 55-45 is still relatively close. It's not like just a complete windmill slam. But more often than not, I would expect to win that matchup. But as you saw, sometimes they will have that 1 or 2 of card that ruins us. If you want to really hone in on having more disruption, there is obviously the build where we cut the Once Upon a Times for more disruption. So we get 2 more pieces of discard and the Not of This World. That is kind of the other build of this deck that exists at the moment. I really like the Once Upon a Time. You sort of saw it smoothing out some hands and speeding us up. On my data collection, it has sped up the deck by, on average, you know, about 2/3 of a turn or something like that in terms of the turn we're killing our opponents. And I think that extra speed is pretty good because I don't think this format is going to be any less combo-rific than it has been for the last few months. So where does that leave us? That leaves us where I, once again, like playing Dark Depths. I think it is fine to play right now. It's a proactive combo deck. It has some interesting universal disruption, like hand disruption like this. It has a game plan where if you keep a 7-card hand, your game plan is going to win a lot of the time because you have just, you know, your powerful protection on top of what you're doing already. And although we've lost the Psychic Frogs from the format, I still think blue-black is going to be kind of everywhere. And I don't think we're going to see as much white as you would necessarily expect, which is where we kind of fall down a little bit. So like green-white depths, I don't think people are going to be playing green-white depths very much. And Death and Taxes, I don't think people are going to be playing that very much either. So I think the matchups that this deck has are still pretty good. And if you'd like to read more about this deck, that's what my Patreon's for. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. And goodbye.
If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.